Okay. I'd like to call the Village of Essex Junction Planning Commission meeting to order for May 23rd, 2019. On the agenda tonight, we have a public hearing on the updated comprehensive plan update. Before we start, I don't have to warn about anybody in the audience. So, Robin, any additions or amendments to the agenda?
No, I just want to remind you that this is a penultimate meeting before it goes to the trustees.
Okay, so just to clarify, we are going to discuss some last-minute changes or updates,
Mhm.
and then we're
Yes.
going to make a motion to approve and send to the trustees, correct?
The next meeting.
At the next meeting.
Their next meeting?
No. The planning commission has one more meeting.
One more meeting
One
after
more.
this.
And then it goes to the trustees.
Okay.
Right.
And then we'll have a meeting in July and August, I believe, is it right?
We have one more? I thought on the chart, it
Here, I
was,
can-
there was
Let's look at the
next.
chart.
Yeah, I sent you the schedule earlier, so, tonight is just opening and making a motion to open and close the public hearing. And then between now and next Friday, I will make amendments to the plan. I will send it to you by next Friday in advance of your June 6th meeting. And at that June 6th meeting, you will make a recommendation for approval of the comprehensive plan and decide to send it to the trustees. And I'm still looking to see when their next meeting is.
Okay,
I'm not gonna be here the 6th, so everyone has to show up.
right, okay. So I guess we can start with that motion then.
I move we open the public hearing.
Do I hear a
We have to
second?
do it.
Second.
Okay? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Will you hear from the public?
Any members of the public wishing to speak, do so now. No members of the public are present.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to, well, any other comments or comments? Do I hear a motion to close?
I
The
make a
public-
motion, we close the public.
Sorry,
How
Wait.
come
How can we open the hearing and not discuss the,
because we're only opening and closing the public portion.
okay,
We get to talk about it as long as we want,
Right.
apparently, but,
okay.
So,
Okay,
does that make sense?
makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
So John made a motion to
Second.
close. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we did have some updates to discuss tonight. I'm not sure, Melanie, I'm not sure what you wanted to go over first.
Okay, yeah, I wanna give you that date on the trustees meeting. So the trustees will receive the plan on June 11th and warn the first public hearing. And then their first public hearing is July 23rd.
Okay.
And then they have a second and final public hearing, which is August 13th. I can send you.
So
the-
which meeting do we approve?
You
June
approve.
6th.
June 6th.
To, send it to the trustees on June 6th.
Okay. So we will have everything completed by then
Yes,
and done.
yes.
Okay. Does that make sense to everybody?
Okay.
All right.
June 6th is a
June
Wednesday.
Okay,
6th.
so, I was thinking we would start with the, two-page overview of the comprehensive plan, the executive summary. I believe this was sent to you in advance of the meeting. The purpose of this two-pager is to, highlight sample objectives of the plan organized by the heart and soul values. This was created in response to a desire of the planning commission to have something more graphically and easily accessible to understand the objectives and general direction of the plan. Given the compressed timeline, this is what our communications manager came up with, and with, you know, my input on the appropriate content. So this is the first time that the planning commission is seeing this. So I think we should have a discussion about how we should frame these objectives. The way they're currently described is they are sample objectives. You could decide to kind of change that language and make these objectives more about a high priority action oriented implementation plan, which would somewhat address one of the comments that we received from the CCRPC Planning Advisory Committee, that there aren't really measurable outcomes in the plan, and what are the measurable objectives to help the Planning Commission understand the successful implementation of the plan. So that's one question. Do we want to just keep this framed as sample objectives, or put some language in here about these being priority objectives? And also, are these the right objectives? Are there concepts in here that you want to add? Are there revisions to these statements that you want to make? So, yeah, I mean, I think we can have a conversation about the two-pager. Get some, love to hear your reactions on it.
And where does it get put into the comp plan, like somewhere up front or
Yeah.
something in the back, or? up
Yeah,
front?
that's a good question. It will become part of the comprehensive plan if that's the decision of the planning commission. It makes sense to be part of chapter 1 or before chapter 1, because it's the executive summary.
Yeah, I like this. I think it's great. What do you guys think? Do you like the topic, you know, the way they have it broken down? Or do you see something that should be here that's not?
Well, I like it fine, it feels like a plug though, like we have had this heart and soul process, and it's compressed into 2 pages and then slipped in somewhere, and that feels a little contrived in a way, rather than kind of broken apart and put into the document where it belongs to go in, you know, like not all these things belong in the same place. But that said, I'm not sure it's a bad thing, because I think it brings highlighted attention to those 6 items. So it may not be the way I was anticipating it would go, but I think it actually could make it more, give it more of a punch to put it all in one place.
I think when people open up the book, and it opens it up, it gives them these topics right away, and they can be looking for them.
I agree. I think your comment, John, about the heart and soul is actually valid. I would almost say that it's not just heart and soul that's responsible for what's in this summary and in this plan. It's a combination of a lot of different feedback from a lot of different folks that have made this take the direction it has. Wouldn't you agree? So when you say it's almost a plug for heart and soul, then, you know, I would have that same concern to a certain extent, but.
What I meant when I said plug is that it's a plug for the notion that we took the heart and soul points and put them into
Correct, yeah.
Not that I'm plugging heart and soul, because
Gotcha.
they're fine. But as a community, these are the values that we came up with.
Mhm. Yep.
We spend a lot of time getting to this point, and they are scattered throughout the document, and particularly the graphics do show up in some other places, so I think providing this as a highlight, almost a, hey, look for these things as you go through the plan, is gonna work out.
Yeah, I agree.
So I have a question for you. The picture of the young ladies around the Taste of Vermont, or Taste of Essex, probably the arrow pointed at the young lady in the green dress.
Mhm.
Is that the best example that we could use? My gut feel is that having that arrow there and that sign is probably pointing at that young lady, and I'm not sure. I know that sign was probably taken from somewhere else.
Can we remove the arrow?
Can we remove the arrow? Can we Photoshop that out of
I
it?
will check with Emma
I'm sure we
about
can.
that.
Because I think that would be much better.
Worst comes to worst, we can white it out and put it.
Yeah, I think we can just put a white box over it.
Okay, and, there's a piece on the, under local economy on the other side, well, there's a couple of them that, and I just wanna make sure I understand the intention, that, so it's talking about collaborating with the town, and is that what we mean, where we, the village, are collaborating with the town, or do we wanna say village and town, is it about the village, or is it about the village collaboration with the town?
Well, it's the village municipal plan, so
So, should it say village?
probably.
Just checking.
One thing I wanted to say is with the train, it says freight rail service expansion, could we say freight and commuter rail service expansion? Well, it's supposed to be kind of expanded if it doesn't exist. Yeah, maybe not. Talk myself out of that.
Oh, there's a gentleman that wants to start a commuter.
Right.
I like this sheet, I think it looks nice. I mean, I guess my only issue is it's not really an executive summary. It highlights some points that are important, I think it's interesting, I think it's a good thing to have in the front. It doesn't really summarize the entire comprehensive plan, it's just, it's some highlighted points, which is interesting and
Brings out,
good,
yeah,
but,
yeah, some key areas that
yeah,
are
so I don't know if
important.
that's nitpicky or not, but I
It's a
don't
good
know.
point.
We're used to that.
We're gonna call it the, we're gonna call it the executive summary.
Well, is there another name that people prefer?
Does it even need
Why
a
don't we-
name, just cross it?
Highlights,
executive
you could
summary.
call it the highlights.
Doesn't have to be called anything. I mean, it looks
Comprehensive
great.
plan highlights.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a in-depth, summary here. But
Or-
it does look like a highlight, sort of.
Or you could call it core values, or we came up with these as,
Core values.
Core
sounds good.
values, that's a good one, I like that.
Do you like that?
It's very good.
It's not my document.
So change it to core values?
Core
and
values.
I also, just going back and reading that piece I read a minute ago on the town, you need to put town in there, I don't think it works if you don't put town in there. I think the point is we're trying to collaborate with the town, especially on the second one.
Would it be helpful to understand the inspiration for that one? So if you go to page 19, the inspiration for that objective is objective 5.7. Work with the trustees and the Essex Town Select Board on appropriate and feasible consolidation models regarding asset management and services for Essex Junction and Essex Town. In fact, I think
Yeah.
I
So-
basically, that's like intended to be a summary of that whole section about,
Yeah, and it
Public
makes
infrastructure.
sense in the second one because the enhanced energy plan is a combined, plan covering both the village and the town. So I'm fine leaving it the way it is, I just, I wanted to make sure we knew what we were trying to say and that, it sounds like we do, so that's good.
Yeah, I guess that does make sense.
do you want to change, the language in the second paragraph? Where it says the following are sample objectives from the plan, do you wanna change sample objectives to highlights? And we're
Yes.
also gonna change
Or we
executive.
could just take out sample and put in the following are objectives from the plan.
Well, it's not a
No, they're not-
comprehensive
they're not
list.
I like the
Objectives.
highlights, I
The
like
fol-
doing
we could,
that.
you could just put the following are highlights
Okay.
from the plan, or
Okay.
sample highlights, whichever.
Well, I think
I
highlights
think
works.
just highlights,
Okay.
yeah.
There you go.
And we're striking executive summary and calling that highlights.
No,
I
core
thought core
values.
values was
Oh,
what
core
we-
values,
yeah,
sorry.
We like
Glad I
John's.
clarified.
Yeah.
John has to get something.
I got the photo on the cover, I'm in good shape.
That's right, that is yours.
Is it acknowledged? This is the question. Oops. Acknowledging you have to pay.
That's what I hear.
Okay.
I know.
We need a photo acknowledgement.
Absolutely.
Some read.
You had to take 75 pictures before you got that one, you better acknowledge.
100.
Yeah.
The rolls, you use the roll.
Any other comments on the core values page?
I was gonna defer education to Diane here, just to make sure you're comfortable with all of that.
I like the word rigorous.
You like the word rigorous? There you go.
Grit and grass.
There are children that would probably agree with it. But no, I checked, I compared it to what the school has submitted, and yes, that agrees with what they have
Good.
agreed to, so. So I got
Actually,
I like it.
it brings in color and a little bit of brevity, but yeah, still gives you the info.
Yep. Good. Any other comments on that?
And so where are we suggesting it goes, right after the table of contents?
On 4.
Right before, yeah.
Yeah. In the front, right?
Just after John's acknowledgement. Before.
Perfect. All right. What's next?
Okay, we could go through the comment spreadsheet.
Yep.
So we will focus on the yellow highlighted comments. Those are the comments where I need some planning commission direction. If you have any questions about the ones that are not highlighted, please let me know that. So we can start with the first comment related to page 20 of the comprehensive plan. The commenter was asking about Depot Street not being a former or current street name, and wondering if that's supposed to be Railroad Avenue. And I was not able to answer that. So I'm asking if one of you can answer that.
I have no knowledge of that needing to be changed. Do you guys?
Well, if he's saying
What's the,
that,
what?
that there's no Depot Street, and I'm sure he would have looked it up.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up now and it doesn't
I didn't
seem
come
to
up with
be,
one.
Although the.
There, I thought there was a sign at the end that says Depot Street.
And
Down
4?
there.
No,
No?
it's Railroad Avenue.
It's Railroad Avenue. So where is it referenced as?
there's one in Burlington, there is not one in Essex.
But do you want me to read the sentence in the plan? Early buildings included additions to the Stevens Tavern, the Central House Hotel at Central and Depot Streets.
Oh, so it's historic street?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
the commenter was saying, and I know that they have access to information, so if it's not historically named, so why don't we just make it Central Street and Railroad in this plan,
Railroad Ave?
Railroad Ave?
Yeah. I'd make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Since we're on this page, can we?
Sure.
So that the headings of 3.1 and 3.2, it should be I'll defer to Diane, but I think it should be historical development patterns for 3.1 and historic resources on 3.2. Because the resources they're talking about in 3.2 are like historic buildings of historic significance. What we're talking about in the first one is how development has happened historically. So I think
Okay.
that the meanings are flopped. Is that,
Yeah.
do you understand? Yeah.
Yes.
So historical development patterns is 3.1, historic resources is 3.2. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, what's the next,
Okay, so the next one is related to page 34. The commenter is concerned about retail business declining and is asking about focusing a discussion on attracting e-businesses core offices.
Okay,
Is that a direction that the planning commission wants to take for the village?
I'm trying to find out where,
There isn't any data in the plan that highlights whether retail business in the village is declining.
Well, I think we've taken a perspective of encouraging businesses to locate here wherever they,
In general, no
in
matter
general,
what
no
Right,
matter
I-
what they are.
you know, we don't wanna go down the road
Well-
over specifying
I
I
mean,
what
would-
types of,
I think the point is that if you have retail, you have pedestrian traffic intending to go into these, in and out of these establishments. If you have e-commerce, you don't have pedestrians
Right.
looking for places to go there because
They can
it's
stay
not,
home.
it's not a public
Right.
offered space kind of.
Right.
So I would think you'd want to still encourage retail, cause we continue to try and develop pedestrian-friendly, walkable
Mhm.
communities, and if we don't have places for them to go, then we're
Yeah.
shooting ourselves in the foot.
But there's nothing stopping an e-commerce business from going into
No.
the second floor.
correct.
Or even first floor for that
Correct.
matter. So it's,
Just
Not-
business.
yeah, would
And
it-
we like
would it
having
bring
a
people
nice,
down?
healthy mix of businesses, so we don't,
Right,
but I wouldn't wanna be promoting one
Over the other.
non-pedestrian type of establishment over another one.
Correct.
So, okay, what does the actual language say at this point?
Well, let me just go back to
And that's 34.
34.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing though is that we're not. We don't really say that we're trying to attract retail or e-commerce or anybody else. We just say, hey, this is what's here.
right.
Yeah, I don't know if
This was,
Okay, so. And why is that pinned to page 34? Cause I don't really see anything on
I
there.
think it's probably a response to,
An earlier?
well, an area, the person probably read this and said, hey, here are the employers. And, what about others? I'm thinking that if anything would change, it would be in the goals.
yeah, this isn't really relative to what we're trying to talk about here. We're just stating what types of businesses there are here. We're not encouraging or discouraging any types of businesses.
Yeah, so I think on page 40, it makes more sense. If we're gonna talk about it at all, it
Right.
would be on page 40.
I mean, our first goal there in 2.1 is look for strategic opportunities to work with business and property owners on economic development.
That seems to cover everybody.
And that covers everybody. I don't know, it's interesting, the person said retail seems to be declining, so maybe that, it's in response to, I mean, it's an interesting comment, it's apropos, but,
Alright, well,
We're not, even here, we're not promoting any particular kind of business. It's just talking about our economic and development goals. So I don't see where we would plug anything in specifically about e-commerce. Or, sorry, e-businesses, I should say.
alright, so if we discussed it and we're happy with what was written, we don't need to do anything.
That's
Correct, yeah, I don't see,
I propose we do nothing.
yeah. I mean, it's a good point, it's a valid point, but, you know, we're encouraging all business, not specific categories. All right, next one.
Okay, so this one is about being specific in identifying which significant wildlife habitat is being defined by use of the Vermont Conservation Design data. I think the best way to answer this question is to look at at map number 1. I
Yeah, I
believe
thought we-
everybody has their maps,
Yeah.
right?
This is what map one?
Yeah. So the language just generally talks about the significant wildlife habitat being defined by the Vermont Conservation Design Project. But there's numerous components of VCD. There's landscape scale components, and there's species and community scale components, and then they're also rated based on their suitability for having ecological importance, you know, based on whether they're surface waters, riparian areas, forest blocks, and then at the species level, whether there's a presence of rare species or uncommon species. So is the planning commission comfortable with saying that both the highest priority and priority areas at both scales make up the significant wildlife areas?
I mean, are we sure that, is there definitely not like in the industry, a definition? Is that like a term that's thrown around as a real thing? I mean, or are we like redefining something that's already?
We are not redefining anything, we're just being more specific. Oh, and there's not a page number related to this, I apologize for that. So it's in the,
Shows 50 to
yeah, it's
53.
in section 4.5.
Well, on the map, it has highest priority areas for species and scale, so.
Yeah, again, I mean, we're very specific about, in the map and in the body of the, what section am I in here?
4.5.
4.5,
Yeah.
thank you. About the importance of these areas. I mean, I don't know how much more specific we can get. Is there something more that we can do, or, I mean, do you guys think this is, what we have here is adequate?
Objective 2.5 seems to cover it.
Yep. And then there's the map,
Right.
which is good.
So then maybe a way to address this comment is taking the language from objective 2.5 and putting it to further clarify that the village is defining significant wildlife habitat as defined by the Vermont Conservation Design, both highest priority and priority areas.
I think that sounds perfect.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect. You guys okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, next.
Okay, so the next one is, does the village have building codes or not? On page 76.
No, we do not.
Okay, I didn't think so, okay.
Next.
So then I will make those,
We defer to the state,
Yes.
yeah, for energy code, so I will make that,
well, for all, there are codes for 1 and 2 family dwellings, and for commercial and everything else, and they're governed by the state, and
It's all
the
this- yeah.
village has no specific other,
yes,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
There's, page 89, a contradiction in terms related to interconnected local streets. Where's the sentence?
89.
Did you miss that?
No, I just wanna see what their comment was, why they were saying it implied. Page 89.
So the sentence is, the interconnected local street system reduces congestion on major arterials, but increases the negative impact on local residential neighborhoods and should be discouraged.
Sounds good to me.
Where is that sentence though? I'm trying to find it.
So it's in the second paragraph on page 89, it's the second to last sentence.
Wait, the interconnected street system should be discouraged?
No, using it should be discouraged.
Well, that doesn't say that, it says that it should be discouraged. The interconnected, if you take out the whole middle part, the interconnected local street system does all this stuff, but increases and should be discouraged.
I think what they want discouraged is using side streets as cut throughs from the
Cut-throughs,
major
yes.
arterial streets. So
Yes.
they're fine for local traffic, but most people who commute through Essex Junction know how to get around Five Corners.
Yeah, yeah.
And that puts a heavy burden on those residential areas that are right there, and I think that's what we want
As
to
in
discourage.
Park Terrace,
School Street notably,
Mansfield Avenue,
Okay.
Mansfield Avenue,
Pleasant Street,
Pleasant Street.
um,
But we're gonna fix all
East
that.
Street.
Yeah, but
Street.
all I'm saying is that we need to have some extra words in there
well,
to say what
well-
we're discouraging.
I mean, just simplistically, if we put, okay, impact on local residential neighborhoods and, cut-throughs or shortcutting should be discouraged. Okay, wordsmithing the whole thing.
We'll just make a separate sentence saying that that's
Okay.
discouraged. And stick it in there.
Seen, neighborhood roads to avoid the Five Corners.
That
Yeah.
says, the ongoing planning should implement measures to discourage cut-through traffic or something like
Yeah,
that,
That's more like what I was
Mhm.
thinking.
Yeah.
right? So there's all kinds of ways to slow
Or- yeah,
traffic
or
down,
say,
to put things in there that
Should
Discourage.
discourage, the use of neighborhood roads.
for,
That's the phrase.
let's see, do we wanna try and get people back, or to stay on the major arterials is what we're really trying to do.
Neighborhood roads should only be used
Interconnected local
used
streets.
for destination traffic.
Everybody has this problem, though, but it's not,
Yeah.
It's, right, we wanna
we
encourage.
we
through
wanna
traffic.
encourage appropriate measures to protect the neighborhoods and keep,
Discourage through traffic on neighborhood roads.
Right.
There you go. So you wanna take that sentence and take, and should be discouraged off the end
yeah.
Yep.
and do a whole new sentence.
Yep.
Okay.
Discourage through traffic on neighborhood roads.
Yep. That makes sense.
There'll be a new sentence. Do you want me to read it back to you on
Yes,
what I'm
please.
thinking? I wrote a lot of stuff, so, okay, so ongoing planning should be implemented to discourage the use of neighborhood roads. How is,
By
oh,
through-
to,
through
to
traffic.
discourage
By
the
through
use of
traffic.
neighborhood roads
By through traffic.
by
By
through,
traffic.
or for through traffic, right?
The use of neighborhood roads by through traffic.
By through,
By
okay,
through
by
traffic.
through traffic, okay. Good?
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Ongoing
On we go.
Ongoing planning should be implemented to discourage the use of neighborhood roads by through traffic.
Yes.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, next.
Is that the last one?
Yep.
Goals and
last-
objectives
last one
Yeah,
is.
sorry.
are more general than,
Yeah, so the last one is about the goals and objectives are more general rather than measurable. Consider including a few key indicators to show success in the implementation of the plan. So, you know, it's the nature of the planning document to be very general. There are a lot of objectives. As I mentioned earlier, I think one way to address this comment is to turn this document into the high priority actions. And so that is a measure of success in that, you know, years from now, if the village realizes these core values, then they can say that there's a measure of success. There's also, in addressing VHFA's comments regarding options for affordable housing, one of my recommendations is to add an action about the implementation of the municipal actions that were in the village and town housing needs assessment. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I printed out the municipal action plan that's proposed,
So we can just reference that?
so we could just reference that. So that's another measurable way that we can address this comment. So it's not gonna address it fully, but it gets at what the CCRPC PAC is asking for.
Right.
And
Yes.
they've already made a recommendation to the board to consider the document for approval. It's just a way to, you know, enhance and improve upon the plan.
What do you guys think about that?
I think we're biting off a lot if we decide that we're gonna sort of try and decide what the high priority items are, and then summarize them and put them on these front two pages. I feel like that's a lot, that's
There's-
a heavy lift.
But when you,
for a
when you
big
reference a
document.
document like the VHFA one, if they modify it,
Yeah,
then our reference is modified too, so.
Well, there's a difference
it's more
between,
current.
there's a difference between deciding if something is a high priority and actually putting a number to it or a goal. So there's a big difference. So to me, it's fairly easy to say our priority is, you know, a more connected walking community. To assign a number to that or what we want to see specifically is much more difficult. Does that make sense? So, like Melanie said, the nature of the comprehensive plan is to be general for that reason.
Right.
Because we're not exactly sure what shape it's gonna take. We know what direction we wanna go, but to assign specific numbers, I'm not so sure that's something that we have the
I
ability
have
to
a
do.
suggestion. I'm looking at table 13, which is all of our goals and priorities and objectives. And what if we put in a statement that said that we would annually revisit the goals and objectives and discuss our progress as something that we do, because we've got some nice targets in there, but if we just file this away and we don't go back to it, then, you know, that's a reasonable question. How are you measuring yourself against your goals? And if we say, okay, we're going to, on a scheduled basis, look at our goals and ask ourselves what we're doing, that's,
I think that's a fantastic
and
idea.
that allows us to change the priorities as the village changes, things
well,
change.
Sure.
if things come along,
Yeah.
the goals are, you know, our objectives are good, so
Yeah.
I think we can, every time we have a chance to look at our land development code or any of our other rules, we go back to our objectives and say, are we
Still
getting
in
to our
line.
goals?
Yeah.
Is this helping us?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then we can tell them, we've got them constantly in the forefront. We look at them all the time to make sure our decisions are getting us in that direction, and we're checking them off when we achieve them.
Okay, so what meeting are you assigning this to be done?
January first,
There you go. January's meeting.
first meeting in January.
Yeah,
New
so
Year's resolutions.
we could put a statement somewhere in the body that says, this, one of our goals is to have an annual update about where we stand with what we're trying to accomplish. That's a great idea.
And then, because it's typically a little slow through the
Mhm.
winter, give us
Yep.
something to
Yeah,
sink our teeth into.
great.
Okay, so I can add
Excellent.
a sentence that describes what we just talked about prior to table 13. Does it need to be anywhere else in the document?
If there was something that said, you know, we're committed to our goals and objectives, it can go even up front.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Isn't there a place where we talk about the document as a whole, and we talk about goals and stuff? Like in 1.6.
Yeah, maybe some more words related to, the implementation table and the reporting that we just talked about added to item 3, the specific goals and objectives. Cause that's essentially what the implementation table is.
Mhm.
It's all those goals and objectives with information about the timeline and the responsible entity.
Right. Yeah, I think that works perfectly. What do you guys think?
There's this big empty box at the top of table 13 where you could put in all that information too. Just, you know, a
Yeah,
regurgitation of our commitment statement there.
okay.
Regurgitation.
Condensed.
Okay, so we're all in agreement on that? All right.
Okay, so that covers the, comments that I wanted the planning commission to pay close attention to. Does anybody have any questions about any of the other comments that were provided? Basically, when it says thanks for your comment, okay, that means that the comment will be addressed as suggested.
Okay. Do we wanna discuss, so the comments from Mia?
Yes, that's next.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
yeah, that's one other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that I don't know that it's in here, and it's, I guess it's a comment that came from, Essex town staff about the enhanced energy plan. Right now, it's in the comprehensive plan as an appendix. And I think it would serve both communities better if it was taken out of the appendix and just it stood as its own document and was referenced, which it is already now, referenced.
Can we have Darren speak to that? Cause I'm thinking we're both going to append it to our plans. And therefore it's, I mean, the danger of separating it is it's somewhere else when you want people to see it.
Right.
It's not there. And, you know, just because we put it in as an appendix to ours, I don't think has any bearing on what the town does or doesn't do with the document. It's our combined document. So, I guess I'm not sure why I would, if it's important to us and it is our energy plan and we're required to have it, I want it mechanically in this document. I don't wanna have to go take another book out of the library to figure out I'm missing something.
If we are focused also in the core values part of working with the town, you know, we're talking about the energy plan, then yeah, I agree with John, it should be in the document.
Which doesn't prevent it from being somewhere else. It's
Correct.
not, right, so why?
Correct.
I mean, it doesn't hurt one way or the other, does it?
Correct. Does that make sense?
It does?
Like, you can't read our comprehensive plan without getting the energy piece with it.
So
Diane?
why not? I mean, it's part of the document, it could be also cited as a link, you know, it's like this, it's separate, but it's attached.
It's just like the map. You
It's
can't,
just like
you
the
can't,
maps.
you
Yeah.
can't not have
You can't not
those
have the
things in
maps.
there.
So.
So we're all in
So it
agreement.
gets, so it gets its own hot link, you know,
Well,
besides the.
We have
link to
we
this?
have a town planner with us, so I'm saying if Darren could,
Darren, would you
Darren
like
could
to add your?
explain the note that,
Actually, you should, leave pretty soon. I saw it stop by on the way back from the town meeting, but
awesome.
Thanks for coming by.
didn't know it was coming, so.
We're
Real quick,
pleased.
the,
Welcome.
to answer that question about, should it be in your, actually in the text? I like the idea of having it in the text, but also having it as a standalone document. And the town, I think, will eventually incorporate it into the main document of the town plan, whether it's a combined town-village plan, am I allowed to say that? Or, or if they're still separate comprehensive plans, but the intent, I think, is eventually to have it incorporated. And I will also add that I think Burlington has an interesting way of doing their sort of sub-studies in their comprehensive plan by having the main document, and then they do have references to other documents, and they do like a little summary in the main document. So you could lean more towards having more of the appended document in your main document, but there could be stuff, goodies to find in the appended one.
So, my personal experience working in Burlington is I'm always thinking I'm missing something,
Right.
and they have a fairly extensive set of codes and ordinances and so forth, and to make it easy for people who are planning in our community, I would suggest that it's nice to know that when you grab the comprehensive plan and the land development code, you've got what you need.
Everything.
And that
You've
you're
got
not looking or missing something
Right.
else, and, oh, did you know we also had to have, these other documents, and since
It also
it's,
helps in the section 248 proceedings. They don't have to go look for it.
yeah, so if it's physically not, gonna make our document too big and it looks like it'll slip in there pretty well, I would be in favor of keeping it as an appendix and physically attached as part of our, and we can make it available separately as well, it's just fine, it has a number of different hats since it represents something that we are doing in conjunction with the town, so.
Or we could have it in a document and then just have it on the website
Yeah,
separately.
yeah. We've also, over the years,
Is
we've
it
had
a
a,
click on the website, or you just click here?
yeah, you would
and
just click a link. Yeah.
Yes, we could do it.
Yeah. Well, we've had feedback from residents over the year too, that they feel that they would appreciate it if we made it a little easier for them to access information. And just another way to keep things all in one place.
Yeah.
So that they feel like like you said, they feel like they have all of the information in front of them that they need. So that's kind of my
Absolutely.
opinion on it.
Absolutely.
Okay, it will stay as an appendix. Sounds good to me. Okay,
Okay.
so now we can move on to VHFA's comments. I came up with some suggestions on how to address their comments. Okay, so their first comment is, talking about, adding some more, or adding an additional action to section 2.3, that talks about the planning challenge. They're asking for, the addition of a goal to increase more housing for, residents earning 80% of area median income. So one suggestion for addressing that is to add an objective to that section and also replace one of the housing objectives in the housing element on page 87 with a statement that says, work with the town of Essex to implement the actions identified in the town of Essex and village of Essex Junction Housing Needs Assessment and Action Plan to increase the stock of homes affordable to residents earning up to and including 80% of area median income. We can also add a sentence to the first paragraph on page 78, which is the introductory paragraph to the housing section that refers specifically to the housing needs assessment and action plans, actionable steps for the municipal governments of Essex and Essex Junction to help meet the identified housing needs in the community. The rationale for these suggestions is the plan already refers to the housing needs assessment. A lot of the data that's in the housing element was summarized. And at the time of that summary, the municipal action plan that is part of the housing needs assessment was not developed yet. This I got a copy of after we already warned the public hearing, and the public hearing draft was already developed. So I think it makes a lot of sense to really specifically and explicitly talk about the action plan and reference it in this document, and I think that it does address Mia's comments. And I passed out an excerpt of the municipal action plan that's part of the village and the town's housing needs assessment. It's in draft form currently, in case you were wondering about the status of it.
So, everything in yellow up
Yes.
here is what we would be adding,
Yes.
okay. And discussion of definition of affordability, is that we're deciding whether to include that as well, or?
Yeah, so that's the next comment about, I think Mia felt like the definition of affordability that's in the plan is unclear, and so she proposed a clearer definition that might be, more accessible to the residents in understanding, why affordability is important and what makes things affordable and what makes things unaffordable. So it's a choice of the planning commission to decide which description of affordability you prefer.
Okay,
And then the other two comments that VHFA proposed, I think make sense to delete. For the first one about why homeowners are cost burdened,
Yeah.
we can't really tell.
right.
We don't, and then the second one is about the burden, that new houses have on the school district, and the data supports the opposite, that there is no burden. So I think we could delete objective 1.1 as well,
Yep. I agree
given
with
the student population is also declining.
that. I agree with that as well. So the real question is the definition of affordability, affordable housing, and including this text on page 85.
Yeah, so-
Anybody have any comments on that? I personally, I'm wondering if the definition of affordable housing can be shortened. I mean, do we really need to get into a discussion about, the other things that knowing that your housing cost should be 30% or less of household income is basic, right? That's a normal standard. So,
Yes, it is. So can we just put in
Can we
that
just put
sentence
that
and
in?
be done with all the rest of it?
and then put the federal, maybe the last part, the federal and state housing programs use this definition when determining affordable rents and home purchase prices in terms of subsidies for households earning 60%. I don't know if that's important to put in there. What do you guys think?
Is
I,
there
I,
any,
I think at some points, you have to read this, that it's not us reading this, that it's next door neighbor reading this. So if your next door neighbor, would they understand what we have on page 85, or would they understand what is recommended by
Well, I mean, I would assume, and if, I think I know that my next door neighbor is a lot more intelligent than I am. So if I just put 30% in there, and I understand that that's what that's what makes a house affordable or unaffordable, or, you know.
Can we
what I mean?
mix and match and put what you think's appropriate, and then reference affordability in Chittenden County as defined by the Vermont Housing Finance Agency?
That works for me.
Because it'll change from year to year too, and it makes the
Right.
document more elastic.
Correct.
Yeah, I think we need to give it some target so that you're not stuck going to a reference to find out what the
No,
baseline
yeah.
is.
Right,
I think
exactly.
We need it all, like you said, you want it all in one document.
Yeah,
I think we can give information, but not be comprehensive about it, and say if you need to know
Correct.
more.
Correct.
alright, so a general statement about what's considered affordable, or, this generally housing is considered to be affordable if, right? We like
Yep.
that sentence?
Yep. If total housing expenses, rent, mortgage, and utilities cost 30% of, or less of a household's income, period.
Yeah.
That's the
And then we
explanation right
wanna
there.
jump to the Chittenden County reference,
Correct. That was my idea, yes.
right?
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then it's okay to have something about what federal and state housing programs do with this definition.
As long as they don't change.
That would be my concern, but
They haven't changed so far.
It's,
That's
they're
what they've
still
been using.
using that definition. Typically these.
if you guys wanna leave it in, that's fine.
Of the area median income, so I don't mind the last sentence either. And it may be that you put the Chittenden County information in after the last sentence, because then you've gone from general to what state and federal do, and then typically, area median, and then you tell them what the area median is, and you're done.
So all we're taking out is the sentence, when households pay for more housing, it can be more difficult to afford other basic necessities. That sentence is the only one we're taking out. Is that correct?
Sunset.
Yeah.
Alright, so if we're okay with that, then can I go back to this, the two bullet points that are in
Yep.
yellow?
Sorry, I kinda jumped ahead on that.
Well, I'm a little, we all.
Wait,
we just-
before we go back to that, I just wanna make sure I have this right. So, looking on page 85, in the note about affordability, we're ending it at income? Where it
Yes.
says generally housing is affordable to a person if the housing costs are 30% or less of their income.
Of a household's income, yes.
Yep, so we're ending it there, and then,
We are only taking out the next sentence.
then we're only taking out the, all residents want their housing cost to be low, we're taking that out?
No. Where am
That's
I?
on 85.
It's
So
on the
slightly
page, it's
different.
Oh,
on the
yeah.
act,
Yeah.
it's on the.
Yeah, we're
actual-
taking, we're taking that out too?
It's on the
No
actual.
matter how much money you have,
page.
you want your housing costs to be low.
Yeah, exactly.
Or do you wanna just replace what's on 85 with VHFA's definition minus the sentence that starts with when households pay more for housing, it can make it difficult to afford?
Yes, that's what we wanna do,
Yes.
cause
Okay,
all
so-
residents want their housing, everything after that is, we
It's-
don't need it.
Yeah, we
On
don't need
page 85?
Yeah.
Yes.
but
Okay,
we-
and then we're inserting VHFA's definition.
Yep.
Minus
Yep.
that sentence I just read, and
Yep.
we're gonna reference what VHFA defines as affordability.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for the confusion on that.
No, that's good. Alright, so the two bulleted points in yellow, if I understand it, are referencing a document that we haven't seen yet. This,
I think this is part of it.
Village of Essex
Part of it.
Junction, Town of Essex and Village of Essex Junction Housing Needs Assessment and Action Plan. Do we have that? Can we
I
hold-
believe you were given a
A
draft of it when we talked about the housing element earlier in the process.
And it includes statements about what we think we wanna, for the future going forward. Or-
Yeah, the version that you saw was about data. This is the first time that you're seeing the actionable steps. cause it came
Which
out
this is it,
in early May.
okay.
Alright, so I guess what I'm trying to avoid is including, objectives and other targets that reference things that we're not,
We haven't seen.
we haven't seen yet, or we don't know what they are, or that we don't have control over them, or we haven't. Alright, so, and this is just part of the action plan that we're seeing?
Yeah, we can hold,
And,
off on including this statement, and it could be included, I'm thinking about this, it can be included on June 6th, when you make a motion to make a recommendation to the trustees to approve it, it could, your motion can include, this language that I'm proposing here, so long as you're comfortable with the action plan.
there's a lot of stuff in here that is pretty, significant, so I guess what I would suggest is that we, include a commitment to move forward with a municipal action plan that addresses housing and affordable housing, but I don't know that how we can, go out and adopt this thing that's not even, hasn't gone through all the steps yet. It feels like that's approved, that's recommending or approving something that hasn't been done yet.
So, but what you suggest is the prudent way to do it, because it talks about it and says we are going to.
Yeah, and then we can check it off our
Right.
checklist in January when we
Jeez. That's rougher. Okay.
see how that works.
Yeah, real job.
So
Alright,
this-
so can
this-
we have language that says we are
Commit, we commit.
consider, or no, we're not considering it, we're actually,
Committing.
we're
Well,
committed to moving forward with, work on a municipal action plan in conjunction with the town to address housing costs and affordable housing.
Right.
Done.
Ding ding.
So whatever, however you wanna write that to have a goal and an objective and whatever, you're welcome to do that.
Okay, so committed to working with the town of Essex, on the,
Development.
is it the development?
Development of a
Development.
municipal action plan.
Okay,
To address identified housing needs in the community.
Correct.
Reading it right off the period, cause that's all I'm doing so far.
okay.
So this is gonna be 2.1 then.
Cause this is pretty interesting, that we're agreeing to revise land use regulations, we're agreeing to inclusionary zoning. No, we're just,
Accessory.
we're reducing development fees for affordable housing projects, that would be, yeah, that should be.
We don't have development fees, that's interesting.
Establishing a housing trust fund,
Actually, there's been discussion about it.
Yes, there has,
Trustees
with more
level.
comments.
yeah,
Yeah, I think she addressed the trustees
Yeah,
in the
that's very good.
last 6 months or something.
Very good.
Yeah.
but we're struggling to get a landscape fund, how are we gonna get a housing fund?
Get more to come and visit.
If we
Robin.
don't have impact fees, why don't we have impact fees, everybody else has impact fees.
Trustees doesn't want to, they want to encourage development in the village center. No, I think now that we've got the neighborhood.
Well, you've got a lot more of the village than just the
I know,
village center.
But I think now that we got the neighborhood area designation of the designated village center, if people meet the requirements in the neighborhood area designation and avoid Act 250, then they should, it wouldn't be a hardship to pay fees to the village.
Yeah.
And if you had impact fees, you could use not paying them as an incentive to get the things you want.
Yes.
All in favor of impact? All right, so we'd have to talk to the trustees about that.
Yes.
All right, so there's something for the planning commission to be working on.
Work. You and I've got something to work on anyway, I've already started, but you
Oh.
haven't.
All right. Okay, so, we're okay with the language that we decided to use on this about working with the town and village
Yeah, I
to,
think that works. Yep.
it's pretty close to what it says here.
Yep.
So Melanie, have we addressed everything on this page? We're all set?
Mm-hmm,
Think so.
yep. Till next time.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, good work. Much appreciated. Do
Yes, excellent.
you have a motion?
Does anybody have anything else they want to talk real quick about? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Should do adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Alright.
All opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Good job. John?
Okay, June sixth.
What are we working on?
I have like 40 lines in
About what?
I've got 40
Do you have to write an essay?
That's what you Trump wrote.
Why I want to be an architect?